small, conservative town in Tennessee, nestled between rolling hills and winding rivers, the Grand Lakeview Hotel stood as a relic of old Southern charm. With its polished marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and history of hosting only the wealthiest guests, it was known as an establishment that catered exclusively to a certain crowd, mostly affluent white patrons who were used to the quiet and predictable atmosphere of the hotel. Despite its beauty, Lakeview Hotel had a subtle but undeniable reputation for being less than welcoming to people of color. No one openly spoke about it, but many assumed that the hotel, with its long history, would never truly embrace diversity. Enter Dr. Tasha Williams, a Black woman with a powerful presence. Tasha was an accomplished professor at a renowned university with a PhD in education and decades of experience in social justice work. She had recently been invited to a prestigious educational conference in the town, where she was scheduled to give a lecture on the importance of inclusivity in schools and the impact of bias on students of color. She had heard a bit about the town's reputation, but she didn't think much of it. After all, she had traveled extensively and dealt with prejudice her entire life. Nothing she hadn't encountered before upon arriving at the Lakeview Hotel. Tasha's first impression was one of discomfort, though she didn't let it show. The receptionist, a young woman named Claire, barely looked up when Tasha walked through the door. Tasha smiled politely, her suitcase rolling behind her. She could feel the tension in the air, but her confidence was unwavering. "Good afternoon," Tasha said, walking up to the counter. "I have a reservation under Tasha Williams." Claire's eyes flicked up and down, her gaze lingering just a little too long on Tasha's skin. She quickly typed the name into the system. Yes, Mrs. Williams," she said, almost too quickly. "Your room is ready. Here's your key." Tasha accepted the key with a nod, sensing something was off but not wanting to make assumptions. She had seen people act uncomfortable around her before. It wasn't unusual. What bothered her, however, was the hushed whispers she could hear coming from a couple of older women who were sitting near the fireplace, their eyes locked on her. As Tasha made her way to the elevator, she overheard snippets of the conversation. Words like "out of place" and "shouldn't be here" floated through the air. It didn't surprise her, but it did sting, reminding her that no matter how accomplished she was, people still saw her as an outsider in places like this that evening. As Tasha made her way downstairs to attend the welcome dinner for conference speakers, the atmosphere in the hotel was even more charged. The grand ballroom was filled with high-ranking officials, scholars, and affluent members of the town's community. When Tasha entered, the room fell into an almost eerie silence. Conversations stopped abruptly, and a few heads turned in her direction. She could feel the weight of judgment, the subtle yet unmistakable discomfort. But she didn't flinch. She was used to it. Tasha approached the dinner buffet, when she was greeted by a man in a tuxedo who introduced himself as the event coordinator. "Welcome, Dr. Williams," he said with a stiff smile, his voice strained. "We're very glad you could join us tonight," Tasha nodded politely. "Thank you. It's an honor to be here." As she filled her plate, she overheard a couple at a nearby table whispering to each other. The woman, an older guest wearing a floral dress, glanced toward Tasha and muttered under her breath, "I don't understand why they invite people like her to these events. It just doesn't feel right." Tasha's heart sank. She had heard comments like these before, but somehow, hearing it in such a formal setting made it sting more. Still, she stayed calm. After all, this was why she was there, to challenge these very biases and shed light on the importance of inclusivity and acceptance. After dinner, she stood at the podium to give her lecture, and the room grew tense again as the crowd of mostly white older individuals turned their attention to her. Tasha began speaking with passion about the importance of diversity in educational spaces and how bias, both overt and subtle, impacts students of color. She had planned to start with a discussion on the role of educators in creating more inclusive classrooms, but as she spoke, she couldn't shake that feeling that the audience wasn't really listening to the content of her words. They were listening to her. They were trying to determine if a Black woman could actually speak with authority in a room filled with so much history, so much privilege. But then, something unexpected happened as Tasha delved deeper into the issue of bias. She reached into her bag and pulled out her badge, her official state government badge as a senior education. consultant for the state's Department of Education. It was a symbol of her accomplishments, her expertise, and her influence in shaping education policy. She showed the badge to the room as a federal consultant, she said, her voice firm and unwavering. I've worked across the country advising school districts on how to improve diversity programs, train teachers on confronting bias, and create safe spaces for all students. I didn't come here to tell you what you already know. I came here to remind you that progress is about action, not just words. There was a long, awkward silence in the room. For a moment, the air felt thick, like everyone was waiting for something. And then, slowly, the room began to shift. Some people shifted in their seats, others exchanged glances. The whispers stopped. Tasha continued, I don't need your approval, but I do need you to understand that the work we're doing in education, this isn't just about feeling good or being polite. It's about ensuring every child, no matter their race or background, has access to the same opportunities for success. And that begins with confronting our own biases, no matter how deeply ingrained they may be. As she spoke, she noticed the room gradually becoming more attentive. The judgmental glances were replaced by curiosity, and by the end of her lecture, people approached her not with the same discomfort that had met her earlier, but with questions, with genuine interest in her work and her experience. It was in that moment, standing in front of a room full of people who had originally doubted her place there, that Tasha realized the true power of education, how it not only transforms individuals, but communities as a whole. By challenging assumptions and confronting uncomfortable truths, she had done more than just speak on diversity. She had shifted the very atmosphere in the room. As the night ended and the guests began to mingle, the tension had dissipated. People who had once whispered behind her back now sought her out for conversation, asking her questions about her work, her experiences, and how they could be part of the change. Tasha left the Lakeview Hotel the next morning with a sense of quiet triumph. She had come to this town with a mission to speak about inclusivity and challenge bias. But in the process, she had done something far more significant. She had changed minds, opened hearts, and proven that a single, confident voice could break through the walls of prejudice.